There are so many very, very deep and some even mystical intentions and ideas to have with regards to the Dal Minim, the four species, the Lulav and the Esrog. But really, the simplest one of them, one that's already brought in the Gemara, is that what we're telling ourselves when we pick up these Dal Minim is that just as these Dal Minim cannot exist, cannot grow without water, so too we cannot exist without Hashem. And we see the vulnerability, the dependency of these different plants and objects that we're holding. And what they're supposed to remind us of is our vulnerability and our dependency, our fragility, and how deeply we need God for our sustenance and our livelihood at all times, just like these plants require fertilization and water and all these different things in order for them to exist, so too there's so much that we depend on in order for us to exist. We live in a culture and a time and a society where the idea of self-sufficiency, self-reliance is celebrated in a very extreme kind of a way. There is, of course, a value, there's something significant about the idea of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, independence. But what Judaism really teaches us is that ultimately none of us are self-reliant or self-sufficient or dependent at any moment. Even just for this video to be happening, for me to be recording this, for you to be watching this, to be listening to this, there are so many people that each of us are dependent on at this very moment. And you can think about that. I mean, starting with the fact that there's electricity. How many people are involved in making that happen? I'm dependent on you for listening to this. You're dependent on me for sharing this. We're wearing clothes. We rely on other people for that clothing. I'm using equipment to record this. I rely on other people for that equipment to make that possible. I assume you're sitting somewhere that's not filled with garbage. Well, that relies on a certain system to be in place that takes garbage. There are so many people, and that's all the things I just listed are on the most basic of basic levels. There are dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of people involved in everything we do at every moment of our lives to make what we do possible. So the whole idea of self-sufficiency and self-reliance is really just an illusion. It's not even, is it a value or not a value? It's actually just an illusion. It's a myth. And all the more so, al-achas kama v'kama, moreover and moreover and moreover, how ultimately and utterly dependent we are on the ultimate provider, on God. The notion of self-sufficiency is a complete illusion, because everything at every moment, kol neshama tahalalka, kol neshima uneshima tahalalka, that in every breath there's praise to God, because the very breath itself is a testimony to God's existence. Because if not for God's existence, we couldn't breathe. So embedded, implicit in every single breath, in every single heartbeat, in every single moment, in all contexts at all times, is a complete and total dependency upon God. Hoshana Rabah is a time where we focus on the Arava. We know that the Arava of the four different minim, the four different plants that we use, the Arava is the one that doesn't have taste or smell. It doesn't really have any particularly endearing quality, not taste and not smell. It doesn't have Torah knowledge and it doesn't have good deeds. So why is the Arava so special? Why is it celebrated then? Because actually it's in moments when we don't have particularly good qualities. We don't have anything endearing. We don't really show up with any sense of, well, I'm good at this or I'm good at this. It's in those moments, in the awareness of our deficiency, that we actually access a greater capacity to connect with God in some sense. Because it's in the awareness of how lacking we are that we access a greater and stronger longing. When we know that we don't have, and we know that we don't know, the yearning for knowing and the yearning for having can be greater. When someone's really hungry, they actually appreciate the possibility of food a lot more than when they're satisfied. That's why the Gemara in Brachos says that if a person needs to make a bracha when they're satisfied, then of course they need to make a bracha when they're hungry, because we actually have a greater appreciation of food when we're hungry than when we're satisfied. So the Arava is actually the place that we want to enter, the experience that we want to be able to access in order to create within ourselves a stronger, more intense, and more powerful sense of dependency on God, a greater desire and sense of need and urgency to be connected to our ultimate source. So what the Arava teaches us is that so often we think we need to have all sorts of things in order to function. But actually, when we lose some of those things, it gives us access to something, in a sense, even greater. Because when we have nothing is when we can really appreciate what it means to have everything, everything being Bakol, Hakol, Mikol, Kol, everything being God. When we have nothing, we really yearn for the ultimate everything. And so the Arava gives us that incredible experience of Hoshana Rabah, the ability to cry out and call out, Hoshana, Hoshana, save me, save me. When we fall to that place of really experiencing our nothingness, our leiv nishbar, our brokenheartedness, is when we can experience actually our complete wholeness, because we become so much more connected and rooted in the ultimate source of reality.